Okay friends, let us continue the topic of historiography, the development in the West. In my last video, I explained you the notable contribution by scholars of Europe, right? And we will move forward and talk about some more scholars of Europe who made a notable contribution in the field of historiography. Now the first person we'll talk or we'll discuss today is Leopold von Ranke. Now this person made a notable contribution in the 19th century. Which century? 19th century. From 1801 to 1900. That century will be called as what? 19th century. And this person was from Berlin University. Berlin University is from Germany. Okay? So he was a German belonging to Berlin University. Now this person spoke about critical methods of historical research. I told you critical method means what? Not accepting directly any theory, any event. We have to critically analyze it. This was the idea proposed by Leopold von Ranke. And he said that utmost importance should be given to the information gathered with original documents. I repeat, first of all, he gave importance to the critical methods of historical research. Secondly, he said that there should be utmost importance given to the information gathered from original documents. At the same time, the original documents should be examined with great care. He said that these documents should be analyzed, studied with a great care. At the same time, this person criticized the imaginative narration of history. I told you earlier, in early periods, history was focused on religion, God, and mythological stories. He said that, Leopold von Ranke said that history should not be about imaginative, you understand, na? Imaginative narration. And this person had written some articles, and these articles were published in 2 books. The name of the books are The Theory and Practice of History. The first book is The Theory and Practice of History, and the second book is The Secret of World History. I repeat once again, the 2 books in which the articles of Leopold von Ranke are published are The Theory and Practice of History, and the second is The Secret of World History. So once again, I will summarize about the notable scholar Leopold von Ranke. His ideas, or he made a notable contribution in the 19th century. He was from Berlin University. Okay, he gave more importance to the critical analysis or critical methods of historical research. He said that according to him, more emphasis should be put on information gathered from original documents. At the same time, he said that the documents should be examined with utmost care or great care. And he criticized the imaginative narration in history. And lastly, 2 books were written by this person, The Theory and Practice of History, and second is The Secret of World History. So these were the 2 books published in which all the his articles were present. Now that was all about Leopold von Ranke. We now move on to a very famous personality called Karl Marx. Okay, have you heard of communism and socialism? See, these concepts, especially socialism, communism, are famous, or they originated in Russia and slowly they spread to China and some more countries. Okay, even we Indians have one party called as Communist Party of India. You must have heard about this political party. Now, these ideas of communism or ideas of socialism originated from the thinking of Karl Marx. Okay, now this person, Karl Marx, he was a German, and in the later half of 19th century, these new ideas came into picture, and that's why his contribution was notable. Now, what were his ideas about history or historiography? Let's understand it. See, first point, according to Karl Marx, history is not about abstract ideas. Abstract means what? Imaginary. But it is about living people, life of living people. Okay? Second point, according to Karl Marx, human relationships are shaped by fundamental needs of the people, and ownership as well as the nature of prevalent means of production. What did I say? I repeat. Human relationships are shaped by the fundamental. Okay, what is the fundamental need of a person? You all know. Okay, food, shelter, and clothing. These are the fundamental needs. And secondly, it also depends on the means of production and ownership of these means of production. Now, sometimes the accessibility may not be equal to all the people in the society. Means some people are rich, they have ample amount of food, they may have big houses, okay, or they may be having a lavish lifestyle, which we see around us. Okay, in today's date, we can see such people who are very, very rich, and at the same time, there are people who are not able to eat a meal 2 times a day. There are such poor people who don't have shelter, who don't have clothing, who don't get proper food. Okay, and this is what inequality in the society. And when such inequality happens, will the relations between the rich and the poor be good? No. The relations will be what? Bitter. Secondly, this inequality leads to the division of society. Society gets divided, the upper class and the lower class, and this leads to class struggle. Class struggle means what? There will be always clashes, disputes between the rich and the poor. I'll give you examples, don't worry. Now, according to Karl Marx, human history is full with examples of what? Class struggle, in which there is a dispute, struggle between the upper class, which are rich, having all the necessary you can say fundamental needs and all, and second are the poor class who are not getting the necessary fundamental needs. And this inequality is nothing but leading to class struggle, and all these ideas he has penned in his book called Das Kapital. Das Kapital, in German it is, the meaning is the money. Capital means money, Das means the money. Okay, now I'll give example. See, you know about the people who own the industries. They are called as industrialists. They earn in billions. Okay, they earn in billions, crores of rupees they earn in a year. But does the worker in that factory earn that much? No. He may be earning in some thousands, right? And this is a good example of what? The class inequality. Similarly, the landlords, okay, they exploit the peasants working in their farms. Peasants are not given proper wages, while the landlords, they keep all the crop production, they earn in crores, but they don't give the sufficient wages to the peasants or farmers. So in agriculture, this is the what class inequality. In cities, we come across this class inequality between the industrialists and the workers. So in every part of human history, we come across the rich and the poor. This was a concept which was given by Karl Marx, and he has penned them in his book The Das Kapital. Okay, I hope it is clear. Okay, let's move further and talk about the three more notable scholars. Actually, we will not talk about first the notable scholar, but we will talk about a school of thought which was called as Annals School of Thought. Now, this Annals School was started by French historians on the onset of 20th century. In the beginning of 20th century, this Annals School was started, and this new school of thought was started by French historians. Okay, and it gave a new direction to the history writing. Why I say it gave a new direction? See, many people, even you, may be thinking that history is about what? Politics, political leaders, kings, then diplomacy, wars, the great leaders of the past, all these things means what? History. You are wrong. The Annals School had a different thought. It said that, okay, these are part of history, but history should include the matters of our day-to-day life. Like, history should include agriculture, it should include trade, it should talk about life of local people, it should talk about climate, okay, technology, the means of communication during the period, the social division, how the society was divided into upper class, middle class, lower class, all these things should be, and also collective psychology of the people. These things should be discussed in history. Okay, I repeat, the Annals School was started on the onset of 20th century. It was this school of thinking was started by French historians, and it gave a new direction to writing of history. It said that history is not only about what? Wars, politics, political leadership, great leaders, kings, etc. But it should also include what? Trade, agriculture, life of common people, okay, technology, means of communication, social divisions, okay, climate, all these things should be included in what? History. And that's why we say it gave a new direction to history writing, the school of Annals. Now we also talk about feminist historiography. Feminist historiography. This idea came late in the 90s, in the later half of 20th century. And see, actually our society, even not only India but around the world, the society was male dominated. Even most of the historians were men, and they focused more on the contributions of men. Women were sidelined. Women were what? Ignored or sidelined. As a result, the contribution of women in history was totally neglected. This thinking had to be changed, and a famous French writer, okay, Simone de Beauvoir, she helped in establishing the fundamentals of feminist historiography. I repeat, a French historian, a lady called Simone de Beauvoir, helped in establishing the fundamentals of feminist history. The motive behind it was not only to include the achievements of women in historiography, but at the same time, rethinking should be done on the mentality or perspective of male historians. Do you understand what I want to say? The main motto of feminist historiography was first of all to include the contribution of women in different sections of the society, in different walks of life. That was the main intention. But at the same time, there should be rethinking of the male-dominated perspective in historiography. The male-dominated perspective should be changed. And what was the other intention? Because of feminist historiography, the focus was put on various aspects of women's life, the employments available to the women from time to time, they were discussed. Their role in trade unions, the women's role in trade union were discussed. Which institutes were working for their cause, even these things were discussed in women historiography. And also their family life. Getting it? So I repeat, focus was put on various aspects like employment available for women, secondly role in trade unions, thirdly the institutes working for their cause, and also about their family life. Now after 1990, women were portrayed as an independent working class. Okay, in history after 1990, women were portrayed as an independent working class. In this way, the concept of feminist historiography came into picture. And who was responsible for it? The French historian, the lady called Simone de Beauvoir. Okay, she placed the foundation of the fundamentals of feminism. Getting it? So that is all about feminist historiography. We come to the last historian, and his name is Michel Foucault. Actually, that word Foucault is pronounced like Foucault, Michel Foucault, and this person contributed greatly in the 20th century. Michel, he gave an idea in his book called as The Archaeology of Knowledge. The book written by him was famous and it brought a new concept in historiography. The book's name is Archaeology of Knowledge. Now, according to Michel, the practice of arranging historical events in chronological order. I repeat, the practice of arranging the events in a chronological order is not right. That is not sufficient. Archaeology doesn't strive to reach the ultimate truth, but it tries to explain the transitions which took place in the past. Now, what is the meaning of this sentence that I am telling you? See, to understand history properly, okay, archaeology helps us to study the transitions which took place in. Transition means what? The changes in the life of humans which took place in the past. That can be understood. Okay, that is more important. Instead of simply arranging the events in chronological order, we have to understand how the transitions, how the changes took place in the life of humans. Archaeology should put more focus on this particular idea, and he has explained all this in his book, The Archaeology of Knowledge. Are you getting my point? Once again I repeat, archaeology doesn't strive to reach only the ultimate truth of historical ultimate historical truths, but it attempts to explain the various transitions which happened in human life. Secondly, he said that the explaining transitions is more important. How the transitions took place, that explanation is more important in historical research. That will be helpful for us. And he subjected historiography to new areas which the earlier historians had never thought about. I repeat, Michel focused made changes in historiography, and he focused in those areas which the earlier historians never had thought about. And these areas were, first, psychological disorders. Even that was made a part of what? Historical study. Second, the science of medicine. How in these years medicines have changed. How man has started using new medicines for the cure of disease. That was also included in the history. And one more topic which he proposed to be included in the historiography was prison administration. I repeat, prison administration. So he brought into focus new sectors or new ideas in historiography. First was psychological disorders, second was science of medicine, and third was prison administration. In this way, Michel Foucault tried to bring new ideas in the concept of historiography. Now today, historiography has become wide sector, wide you can say branch of studies. It includes a number of sections like which earlier historians had totally neglected. It includes cinemas, television, dramas, paintings, literature, architecture, dance. All these are now also included in what? Historiography. So in this chapter we studied how historiography was there in ancient period and how in Europe more focus was put on scientific methods of historiography. That we studied. Also we studied the contribution of notable scholars in historiography. These are all the points we discussed in the first chapter. Hope you have understood it. Okay, it's a very easy chapter to understand. You watch my videos again and again and refer the text. 101% you will understand each and every point which is given in the textbook. Each and every point I have explained in these videos. Okay, your only work will be keep the textbook beside you, read the paragraph, and then watch the video. Both things should be done simultaneously. You will get the complete idea about the explanation of the topics, okay, and what is the matter in this particular chapter. Okay, thank you.